Ufunuo wa Yohana 38 dial *811 *817 hash.
Wakati mwingi katika maisha binadamu hujipata kwa shida, unapata ya kwamba hauna usaidizi unaohitaji, biashara zinaisha, hakuna mapato ya kila siku. Lakini hata kwa hayo yote, Biblia inasema ya kwamba katika kitabu cha Ufunuo wa Yohana mlango wa 3 mstari wa 8, na yajua matendo yako. Tazama, nimekupa mlango uliofunguliwa mbele yako.
Ili kupata skiza tune hiyo ya Yohana 38 dial *811 *817 hash. Dial *811 *817 hash.
The greatest rally in the world is back in Kenya. Catch all the action of WRC Safari Rally live and exclusive on KBC Channel 1 from 24th to 27th June. See the world's best drivers navigate their machines on Kenya's rough terrain at breakneck speeds. Experience the thrills, adrenaline, drama and excitement as man and machine do battle. Don't miss out. WRC Safari Rally, live and exclusive on KBC Channel 1, your true sports partner.
Bwana Motiso, pikipiki yako ndio hii. Uko shwani yangu. Hii pikipiki ni unakumbuka uniekelea the lowest unique bid yako ilikuwa ngapi? 18 shillings. Na unajua kuendesha hii gari? Kidogo. Haya, kitoko yako shika helmet, kifungu yako chomoka na mali yako.
Kujiunga na QuickBid ni rahisi. Enda kwenye M-Pesa, bonyeza paybill kisha weka business number 4032353. Kwenye account weka kodi ya bidhaa unayotaka na bid yako ya chini zaidi. Kwa mfano TV 16. Kisha weka shilingi 20 tu kama idadi yako. Weka bid yako pia kwenye www.quickbid.co.ke. Kumbuka, bid ya chini zaidi ya kipekee ndio hununua. QuickBid, bidhaa bora kwa bei ya chini.
Days into the month of June 2021, a few minutes past 10. Thank you so much for creating time for us. This is News Check. Today a lot has been happening already. This particular morning, the Education Cabinet Secretary, Professor George Magoha, has just launched the Form 1 selection exercise at the Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development. A lot coming forth from that particular forum, and we will be discussing that plus much more that touches on the education sector in this particular program today. So thank you once again for creating time for us. My name is Serfine Achieng Ouma, and our sign language interpreter for this morning is Susan Thuku. Of course, in studio, I will be engaging a panel that contains 2 education experts who will be helping me unpack some of the issues that have shaped this particular process, a process that was marred with a lot of challenges. We remember the lockdown that was there in the country that saw schools being closed for about 8 months when learners could not go to school for physical learning. And of course, at a time when others were preparing for the national examinations, so a lot of anxiety gripped the nation as candidates were preparing for the examinations with a lot of uncertainty as to when they will first resume back to school for learning, and of course when they're going to be sitting for this particular national examinations. But we saw the Ministry of Education together with other players, including those from the Ministry of Health, put in measures and protocols that saw learners resume their learning first with the candidates and those who were transitioning for the CBC program, and of course later on schools were reopened fully for all learners to go back to school for physical learning. So amidst those challenges, just the other day we saw candidates who sat for the 2020 Kenya Certificate of Primary Education Examinations and KCSE as well post very good results amid those challenges and the uncertainties that they went through before they sat for those exams. And today, that Form 1 selection exercise was launched to kickstart their journey into joining secondary school. So we'll be discussing that plus much more in this particular broadcast. Please engage us on social media media at Serfine_Achieng, and also on our official social media handle at KBC Channel 1. We'll be sampling your questions and your views in the course of this particular program. Allow me to introduce my panel for the show this particular morning. It's two gentlemen who have been in this particular sector for quite a while, and they have a vast of experience to just discuss with us on some of the issues that should shape this process and how do we recover in the education sector during this COVID-19 pandemic. I'm talking about sitting at the center there. We have Major Retired Peter Mwithi. He is a governance and policy expert, but of course today also is wearing the hat of an educationist. He has a background in education as a trained teacher. Of course, we also have Jacob Kioko. Jacob Kioko is an educationist as well, and also he understands the twists and turns of running a school, and a private school for that matter, private schools that were really affected by this COVID-19 pandemic. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for creating time for us, and we'll be learning a lot from your experience and also just helping us understand how the best way forward in the education sector as we move on. I'd just like us to start from what actually was launched this particular morning by the Ministry of Education, the Form 1 selection exercise officially kicking off. Candidates will be knowing their fate, which schools they will be attending for their secondary school examination. I just want to understand very quickly from, a general perspective from both of you, how this journey has taken shape, and even how candidates post a very excellent, I would call it that, results amidst the challenges they were facing. What are you getting? What are you reading? What are you learning from this whole process? I'll start with you, Peter.
I think, Madam Achieng, let me say my thanks to the station KBC. This is not my first time to be here, and I'm very grateful, especially now that you have given me a chance to come and talk on the issue which is very pertinent to our country, the release of the results for Form 1, our students who are going for transition in secondary schools, August 2nd, I think. And I should say one thing, madam, that our teachers out there, although we had these pandemic issues and many issues, they really worked hard. Mm-hmm. I used to go to Kajiado schools where I reside, and I used to see teachers working very hard. And one of the things that we must appreciate is our teachers out there in school. Mm-hmm. They have done a fantastic job, and that has resulted to the posting of good results for the last KCP candidates.
All right. Jacob, it was a bit uncertain how this process was going to take shape, considering the COVID-19 pandemic. Learners stayed away from school for 8 months. But here we are. Our children are actually going to Form 1. What can you say about how this journey has also taken shape?
First and foremost, I thank you for hosting me. It has been a very tough time for everybody. School children, parents, and all stakeholders in the Ministry of Education, starting with the topmost office. But the problem is not insurmountable. It has been surmounted through a lot of hard work and dedication from all sectors. In the case of the pupils, a lot had to be done even during the closure. Due to COVID-19, we had to go through all intricacies with a parent, with a child, and the teachers especially, and we had to encourage, make use of internet learning, make use of what is available at home and at school, and also holding examinations. As the pupils learned, we would hold examinations based on the normal curriculum so that they were kept active all through. They were encouraged. And the results are what we see today, that that encouragement and that dedication from parents and pupils and teachers has yielded good results. We are now proud that, Form 1 selection is ongoing. It's going to be, pulled through, and that is going to be of immense benefit to this nation, and it's proof that where there is will, there is a way.
Where there is will, there is a way. Already words of wisdom coming. But thank you so much. All right, so this particular time, according to the CS, this whole process is going to be done electronically, not manually as it used to be back in the day, which came with a lot of challenges. Peter, I don't know what you think about how this is going to change the narrative and even the level of transparency that this process usually, is accorded. How is it going to change the whole process using the online platform to do this?
Madam, let me bring in my experience, because I've been in charge of selection of Form 1, representing Department of Defense in Eastern Province for a very long time. During that time, we used to do it manually. We used to meet in the provincial headquarters. By then, the establishment of administration was provincial. So the PED would open the ceremony, and then we would sit there in groups trying to bring in. It was very exhaustive. It was very, very, very physical, and it was not fair. I can assure you that there was a lot of corruption. The needy who merited to go to some schools never went there. But I think this one by the Professor Magoa, our CS of Education, has said that it was done by computerization. And one thing I would appreciate is that he did say that it is going to be very credible, very fair, and is going to be very equity. One thing I noted about his speech is that he took a directive from our head of state, President Uhuru Kenyatta, who said that the candidates from the slum urban areas must be considered to our national schools. And that was done. Previously, our candidates from slum areas were neglected a lot. They merited to go to some national schools, some good performing schools, even private schools, but because of the poverty level in our slums, they were not able. But this time, we must appreciate that directive, which was carried by the Minister of Education, and he said there is equity. And one thing also heard from his speech is that there were some candidates from slum areas who are taken to day schools in far, far areas of our country, and that this time did not take place. He made sure that the students who come from poverty-stricken areas in slums, in the urban areas, were taken to schools near them just to enable them push up with their educations.
And we'll talk about these learners who come from vulnerable backgrounds a little bit later in this conversation. But I also want to get your view, Jacob, on this particular matter, the transparency and even the time it takes for this whole process to be completed. What do you think, is going to change if we embrace the use of technology in this particular process? And probably are there challenges you've seen with the previous, way of doing it that probably you'd like to highlight as well?
The issue is, no matter what system we use, the key thing is the mental change. That is what is critical, and that is what the CS is here emphasizing. Whether manual or electronic, Kenyan mindset is what is most critical. And with the pronouncements from the head of state, from all stakeholders, that we want to transit 100%, and at the same time, we want transparency. That alone is a lesson to everybody. Everybody is here being told, we must be transparent, we must be transparent, we must be transparent. And from that as the base, then we can advance electronically into doing what we say we will do. So the key thing here is the emphasis to every Kenyan that we must change from not only the manual way of selecting Form 1 pupils, but also the attitude of doing it. Pupils from slum areas, as well as pupils from disadvantaged areas, not necessarily at Mukuru Kwanjenga, but also like a pupil from Mandera. I have had some in my school. They are disadvantaged to the extreme in that they hardly speak English. And if they do, it is broken English. But on being taken on board and on being led, just like other pupils are, they perform well ultimately. So the key thing here is the emphasis that we need to have a corruption-free Form 1 selection process, whether manual or electronic, and this time the electronic selection is easier, it's faster, and it can, you can check it. So the key thing here is that...
is it going to address those issues you're raising, like, for example, what even Peter was mentioning, some disadvantaged learners are being locked out of these opportunities based on the fact that probably they do not have a voice on the negotiating table. Is this new process going to address some of these issues?
I think it is going to address some of the issues because it will now be on a broad base. This is what everybody has scored. What does the computer say? A pupil from this area should be accorded, and also the equitable distribution of resources, because unless we have pupils from all fronts in the country, and this is now easily available from a computer layout, it is easier for decision makers to see in clear focus, and the results when posted, all Kenyans will now see in clear focus that there is fairness here. Unlike in the past, where it was all darkness, in which I and other people, other Kenyans, could manipulate
and
decide this one should go where it should not go. As a result, we have a problem.
I had the CS categorically, and he was really firm on this, saying he's going to switch off his phone because I believe probably it has been a challenge in the past, a few people trying to make calls and trying to take shortcuts here and there. But he was very categorical. He's going to even switch off his phone if he has to, so that this process is as free and transparent as possible. But why do you think there is such a thirst for going to these prestigious schools? What could be the motivating factor, Peter, that every parent wants their kid to land in this national school, in this prestigious school? What could be leading to that?
I think, let me make a reference from the CA's speech. He really did say there's a mistake, and he really directed the directors of education to talk to the teachers outside the field, in the sense that their teachers do not give the candidates a good education in terms of selection of the Form 1s. He did give some examples of schools like Nakuru, Alliance, where he said that during the registration of Form 1, the children do not have the idea of how to choose the schools. Some children chose, for instance, a school like Moifose's Academy. A whole school chooses that school. That school.
It's not even practical.
It's not practical. So he really insisted for the teachers to go back during the registration. In fact, the registration is going on. It's going to be closed on 30th in July. So he did say that the candidates must be given enough education on the choice of selection of Form 1. Not one school to choose, a whole class choosing one school. It gives a big problem to those ones who are going to decide on what to fix them in various schools.
But everybody,
that's a challenge.
Everybody wants to go to this good schools.
And one thing, Madam Achieng, is that the Kenyan way, we want to be very prestigious, that my child is in Alliance, my child is in Pangani. In fact, he did mention Pangani is one of those schools that everybody wanted to go there. But it's human tendency that everyone wants the best. Yeah.
How do we address this task, this hunger, so that we have sort of an easy way of going around it, Jacob, so that everybody is not looking at that one school, that boys' school, that national school? Everyone wants to go there, regardless of even your academic, ability.
Well, the issue here is to want to be seen to be there. Now, that hunger, I think, was inherited from the colonial government, because only a few schools were developed up to some level. And those who have the best marks would be will go into those institutions. So after independence, I think a lot of emphasis was laid on those particular institutions. And as a result, I'm a Kenyan, I pay taxes, why not my child? And everybody says, I want to go to the best. Now, the solution here is, first, when they book their exams, like what my colleague here says is ongoing. First, the teacher, the headmaster, should guide the pupil. This is your history of performance.
Yeah, I like where you're going, because it has to start somewhere.
Yes.
Academic ability.
That's right.
What are you capable of?
Yes.
Yeah.
So everybody knows his or her ability. And these are your results. Now, if you want to go to the best, you may not merit to go into that school. And the parent should also be called along. This is the ability of your child. Now, there are no exaggerations in it, because from class 1 up to today, this is the performance of your child. It is not possible that a miracle will be done in the examination room so that your child gets the best in the country.
But how do you explain this to a parent, though, without them accusing you of branding their child?
It is
because
simple. We do that.
Every parent wants their child to have that high performance, that if it is an A, if it is... They all have to hope until the very last minute. You cannot tell a parent that this is how your child has been performing, so this is what I advise. They cannot go beyond this. How do you explain this in a language that will not be offensive?
We do. Like yesterday, I was on that.
Okay.
And I explained it to parents, not one, not two, that this is the truth. When we are all of different abilities, that I am not a first-class mathematician does not mean that I will not be a first-class lawyer. So you do not necessarily have to go to Alliance and those big-name schools in order to become a doctor, in order to... And I gave my own example. I didn't go to those big schools, but I'm here doing what I do, and that very effectively. So the issue here is, let us see reality for what it is. And in a school, say a class of 50, if everybody is going to fill in to go to Alliance, and we know the chances, the vacancies available in those national schools, then you actually put your school into disadvantage. Because maybe only one, at most two, may be admitted there because of everybody
out of a class of 50.
Yes.
And it's replicated in the 47 counties.
Yes.
Everyone wants to go to that particular school.
True.
Yeah.
So the issue here is to explain it politely and openly to the child and to the parent. This is reality. Let us face reality for what it is. And if you all want to go to Alliance, then you block your chances of going to other good schools. But since everybody wants to go to Alliance, and other people may select to go to other schools, although you may pass well, you may not go to Alliance because of the competition, and you block your own chance of going to a good school because of the, everybody is flocked in there.
All right.
But the solution, the ultimate solution is to upgrade, not on paper, but on the ground, to upgrade as many schools as is possible. The facilities that we have in, say, Alliance and other schools can be replicated elsewhere. All teachers, our Kenyan teachers, they all go to the same TSCs. So the teachers in Alliance are no better than the teachers in other schools. So what counts here is, one, the name, the prestige, and two, the facilities.
So that is what attracts many learners.
That is
I will come back to you, Jacob, but let me just give Peter a chance. He's talking about improving the infrastructure in other schools so that at least they could be at par. All schools will be treated almost equally. And also talking about checking the history, the academic history of this particular learner so that it can inform their Form 1 selection. That's a very key point there that he's sharing. I don't know whether you have something to add as sort of a way that can help us work this out. This hunger, this passion, this thirst of wanting to be in a prestigious school, which is not bad.
I think maybe to add on what my colleague Jacob has said, should be an education awareness on the selection. Maybe he has been in the class. I've been outside the classroom for a long time. But when I was in the classroom during that time, I'm talking of 1970s, when I trained as a P1 teacher, the parents and the children and the career master in that school, during the selection of those schools, they were all put together and they were told what was happening. Perhaps, Madam Achieng, you can allow me to read some statistics, because the shortage of this school, as my colleague has said, is the one which prompts the parents and the students to blog in some schools who perform very well. And the Minister of Education has had a chance of choosing schools on three domains. One is performance, availability of vacancies in those schools, and choices that the children want to do. And let me try to highlight some statistics here on the availability of those schools, because those are the determinant factors on the selection of Form 1s. And that is where we had the problem of one school, because it has excelled in Form 4 exams, then everybody, all the parents want their children to go there. Of course, on prestige issues. There are 103 national schools in our country. That is very short of fall of, we had the candidates, number of candidates, I think last year was about 1.18 million candidates. And you can see now we have 103 national schools, 531 extra county schools, 1,031 county schools, 7,325 sub-county, and 1,164 private high schools. Now, previous Form 1 selection, the national schools are declared 29,000 places, 29,712. Extra county, those schools are declared about 123, 3,099. And the county had the biggest number, 142,358. And then sub-county, it was 685,590 positions. Now you can see the number of candidates, that is 1.18, and the number of the vacancies. So there's a struggle. So I think what he should need, and I think the budget, the Minister for Treasury has already budgeted a lot of finance funding for the Minister of Education. I don't know how much, Jacob, can you remember?
I don't remember.
But it's quite a huge amount of money to subsidize what is there already there. But we should need to have better schools. If we talk about Pangani, which are those schools which are high-level schools like Pangani, Kenya High, Moi Nairobi Girls, then we should have governors try to make resources to have the same schools in our counties.
So you're proposing that the county government should also take up responsibility to improve the schools within their jurisdiction. All right. I don't know whether, you've just had the numbers. And they are bringing out, how there's a serious shortage of, national schools. He's saying only 103 nationally. These are the national schools we have. I mean, amidst a very huge number of candidates who sit for examinations each and every particular year, how then should we go around this particular suggestion we are saying that every school should actually be improved, so that learners will not only want to look at that high national school that is maybe located in several kilometers away from where they live? How do we practically go about it? Should parents also take up a role? Should, the local administration take up a role? What should be done?
The solution is only one: to improve the national economy. There are no two ways about it. On improving the national economy, then more funds will be allocated to improve the existing schools and build new ones. I repeat, all teachers posted in all those schools are trained in our local institutions, teacher service, TTCs, as well as the local universities. Now, when one is posted to one of those high-profile national schools, he does not mean that he is better than the teacher who is posted into another school, which is not so prestigious. So the issue here is improving the facilities available in the so-called lower prestigious, less prestigious secondary schools. And they are not always about that. So the allocation, the funds allocated by the ministry to the Ministry of Education, sorry, the allocation made to the Minister of Education could be substantial, but it's not enough. Because the number of pupils who need to go to Form 1, as per the statistics my colleague has given. Now, no matter how hard we struggle, even if every Class 8 pupil scored A's or through, that will not change the number of pupils to be admitted into the best secondary schools.
They can only accommodate the number that they can, regardless of how the performance was.
The performance is. So the issue here is, the issue here is to improve the allocation of funds to the Minister of Education, and that can only happen if the national economy improves.
Okay, well said. Because everyone wants to go to these schools, why should someone study so hard to go to a school where they are studying under trees? It's reality that in some areas in this country, learners are still studying under trees.
True.
Shortage of classrooms, shortage of teachers. True. They have to walk long distances to get to school. So each and every child wants that beautiful dream for themselves. They want to go to the city, to the urban centers, to have a conducive working environment. Same to teachers. Even teachers want to go to these prestigious schools for better working environments, better terms, better pay. True. So if we do not rethink our strategy in improving the education sector, then we are going to face this problem even in the coming years. I want us to talk about a very important move that the government took up recently to ensure that every learner actually transitions to secondary school. Earlier, it was depending on how much, what marks you have, but we have the 100% transition program that the government saw it fit to allow learners to, each and every person, regardless of what you got, you have a chance in secondary school. A step in the right direction, yes, no, maybe? That's what I want you to comment on.
That is a very good initiative that the government came up with. But let me take you back to, I always like giving my formal example. I'm an executive member of the board of a very local school in Tonya in Tharaka County. When we went there just 2 years ago, the school was so down, it did not have the infrastructure that what we wanted for our children. What we did with our chairman is to initiate behavioral change of the parents around that locality. We have a very negative tendency of our parents that everything, it is the government, without them knowing that the government is you and me. You understand? So what we did, we called all the parents for all classes and we told them what is being given by the CDF. By the way, I was reading in our local dailies, there was a member of parliament who is crying, up to date, some of the funds of a CDF, which actually go to the schools, building infrastructure, has not been released by the Treasury. I hope they are going to do that because we had the Minister for Treasury saying that we must, the funds must be given to the counties. But however, the problem is we need the parents and our Kenyan citizens to have what we call behavioral change, that anything must not be coming from the government, because the government is like a father who sometimes cannot be able to satisfy all his children. So what we did is we did some arambes just under the ground because they were not allowed, and then we built up some classes, you understand? Many of our locals there wanted to take their children to Meru School, Kaaga Girls, Chogoria, but when we brought in good infrastructure and the good administration of the school, the children went. And I can tell you, Achieng, for last year's performance in that school, we had 4 going to university. And yet, we took very minimal marks, 200, 300, just below 2 ensure that our children learn. But with good facilities, with good administration of those schools, with the behavioral change of the parents around that school, they'll contribute to the school, and then everything will be okay.
So
rather than depending on the bigger funds from the government.
So sometimes the local community has to
chip in,
push themselves a little harder for that to happen. But still going back to my question, I'll come back to you on it later. Jacob, just to respond to my earlier question on the 100% transition program, you know, it actually allowed learners to have a chance to transition to secondary school. But did we invest in ensuring that the schools were ready for them when they come, that population?
Unfortunately, no. We did not invest enough, and unfortunately, it is not by design. It is by the situation, the economic situation of the country. The need is there. The zeal to get it done is there. But the money is not there. That is where the problem is. And that is why I'm here emphasizing that the only solution to get that 100% transition done and done right is to improve the infrastructure in those schools, and that cannot happen without improving the national economy. And that is part of what I will be addressing Kenyans on in this show, because I have a way of doing that. That's why I'm so emphatic. Because until and unless we raise the funds nationally, no matter how good intentions we may have for Kenyans, without the means to get that done, well, it will be more verbal than practical.
True. Peter, I don't know what you can add on that, because I'm actually always asking myself why, even after the government introduced the 100% transition program, they still sort of like had to police the parents to ensure that every child is in class. You had even the CS becoming very firm that local chiefs and even the local leaders, local administration, not to really go door to door to ensure that every child is in school. Why should we go that direction? I thought parents really want their kids to go to school. It's only like some of them are not privileged to be able to afford. What could be happening?
I think the problem here, I look at it in this direction. One, as you have said, and I'll also give an example from where I come from. The local administration, right from huyu mzee wa kijiji, like where I come from, I saw very many children not going to school. I stopped them on the way and asked, kwa nini wewe hujaenda shule? And they said, there is no money. But to me, it is the inefficiency of the local administration. You remember sometimes our CS was urging the local administrators to go house to house to ensure that the children go to school so that we can achieve the 100% transition rate.
But should it get to that point?
It should not get to that point, but I will
Shouldn't it be voluntary from the parents' level to know that this child actually deserves and needs to go to school?
Yeah.
Must somebody knock at your door to sort of coerce you to take your son or daughter to school?
There are so many reasons, Madam. There are so many reasons why our parents don't care about the education. One, some of them do not appreciate the value of education. That is one. Second, as my colleague has said, Mr. Jacob, is the economy. Sometimes they don't have, even when you find a parent does not have any money to put the food on the table, how do you think he's going to take the child? Thank to our Constitution of 2010, which allows everybody to go to school, and then the ministry brought about the day schools. You remember the day schools? The day schools have really helped people, because what the parents mostly have to give in is just lunch program. And some ed teachers have brought up the innovative way. If the parent do not have money, if he's skilled in, let's say, in carpentry, he can do the work, and that service is translated to school fees or the lunch program financing. But the problem is the awareness. Some parents do not have the sense of understanding the value of education. And our local administrators, right from the village, do not have the time to talk to our parents in the barazas, in the phone. Our politicians also are failing us. Our politicians are failing us because whenever they come there, it is politics from Monday to Friday. When they come to schools, maybe Harambes to build some schools, to classrooms or whatever assistance they are asked by the head teachers to come and give. Believe me or not, 90% of their speech does not dwell on the education. It deals on the politics and politics and politics. So we need to do a lot in trying to educate our children, our parents, the value of education, especially the media. You people in the media, you should centralize people. You should centralize everybody. It is not a perception that you must believe that everybody who went to school to a certain level will appreciate. We have economic problems that will dash our parents from appreciating the value of education.
Some parents don't appreciate the value of education. Others also use their children to earn a living. Maybe the son or the daughter is doing something to bring income to the family. So if you tell me to take this child to school, how are you going to eat at the end of the day? So these are factors that also needs to be looked at before we make certain decisions. But gentlemen, either way, we've begun the journey. We've already, started this, and the 100% transition program is actually, I think this should be the third cohort. How do we make it work? Because it has to. It's a good initiative. We understand the challenges that, teacher-learner ratio, which was a crisis before the 100% transition. It is even a bigger crisis right now that every learner is going to school. The classrooms, the number of learners who can be accommodated in these classrooms, it was a problem before. Now it has even, tripled. How do we make it work? Because it has to, Jacob.
Well, the only solution, I repeat, is growth of the national economy. And that is what I am now going to dwell on, because I have a solution to that problem. Strictly speaking, I'm not a teacher. I am a marketer by profession. And several years ago, I developed and patented a marketing innovation which enables every individual to earn a living through a scheme which I call the Dugui innovation. Now, you and I know that whereas business is profit-driven, society is value-driven. And there is a gap between society and business in that particular description. This is the gap of economic dichotomy. Now, the innovation is about the bridging of that gap of economic dichotomy between society and business, so that whatever item you purchase from the shop, you are afforded a retainer incentive, and instead of you are redeeming your retainer incentive, you are issued with a share certificate, and cumulatively those incentives are invested in job-creating business corporations. Now, at the end of the trading period for those business corporations, every shareholder is paid dividends. This is empowerment of the masses. At national level, the business corporations which are so created will go a long way in raising investment capital from our local resources in the domestic economy. All through up to this hour, all national governments of the world emphasize on development of infrastructure at the complete exclusion of investment capital. Now, in development of infrastructure is not total development of the national economy, because all governments develop the infrastructure and hope enough investors are going to invest so as to grow the economy as a whole.
It should be the other way around. That's what you're saying.
No. Both are very important.
All right.
The infrastructure is very important. But how then do we get people to invest in that infrastructure? And this is what I'm here saying. We empower the masses from the grassroots so that you are now empowered And you can now invest in that. Instead of waiting for foreigners to come and invest in our economy, we start investing in our own economy, and that is how we grow. Now, the government is going to get a lot of revenue, which can then be allocated to all the departments, the Ministry of Education included. So the key issue here is to raise investment capital from our own local resources. Instead of waiting for foreigners to come and invest, we have already the infrastructure in place. For example, now, unless foreigners come and invest in that infrastructure, we just fold our hands on our chests and wait. If they don't come, the infrastructure becomes a monument. Now, instead of over-depending on foreigners to come and invest, this innovation enables every single living Kenyan, because whoever lives eats, and whoever eats will be afforded this retainer incentive.
All right. I feel like I have a lot of questions concerning this particular innovation, but I risk going into another conversation altogether, which I don't want to do. So allow me to leave it at that. But what I'm getting, it's actually a proposal to for economic empowerment, to ensure that every Kenyan is able to sustain themselves and afford what they need to afford, which is a good proposal. Thank you for bringing it on the table. I just want to also understand, Peter, from your perspective, how do we cushion parents from vulnerable environments, vulnerable backgrounds, so that economic aspect is no longer an issue that should dictate whether they should allow their children to go to school or not? Is there something that can be done also to improve their livelihoods from your perspective, as Jacob has also shared with us his proposal?
I do agree with you. We have the economy and the education, they are correlated. Because if the parents do not have the capacity, economical capacity, to be able to satisfy their needs, then how would they venture into taking their children to school? Especially now that Form 1s are supposed to be reporting, COVID has happened. You should hear the conversations that parents are currently having. And let us thank the 2010 Constitution, which brought about the devolution, so that the funds were to move from the up to the counties. But my observation is that it's just the will of the people. It is not so much on the funds. It's not so much on the funds. Because let me take you back to the subject that we are very sick of as a country, corruption. The money is taken to the counties. Instead of the county bosses investing in education, they do other things. Let us imagine about the EACC, which last time they told us they have secured the corrupted money, if I may use that language, to billions. What if these billions are invested in our education programs? What will happen? The money is there. I don't know where it is going to be taken later on for the projects of other. I don't know whether it's going to bring issues of corruption. I think it's the will. And I'll give you an example in the military, where I've served for 33 good years in charge of education. In every military base or unit, we have a secondary school, we have a primary school, we have a nursery school for our children, because the parents there are always outside the barracks. Maybe they're in Moyale doing other security issues for our country. But the welfare of our children, those who are serving, we are given some money, and this money is translated to 100%. There's no corruption there, I can tell you for sure. So that's why I want to base my argument that it is the will of the people. As much as the economy is a factor there, it is the will of the people. If we have a good attitude of ensuring that our resources are going to the management of the facilities in our schools, we shall do it. We shall be better off. But the corruption issue, the will of the people, that is what we, and of course what Jacob has said, of our independence of our donor stakeholders who are coming outside.
How do we generate our income from within?
We should be self-sufficient. We should educate our parents that this is our baby, and everybody should have integrity. And then whatever resources we have, we must put it to the right for our children. And that is the way forward.
All right. Gentlemen, I'm coming back to you. We're just about to take a very short break, but there is still more that we want to discuss here concerning even how COVID affected the education sector and how do we recover? How do we pick up the pieces? How do we, borrow the lessons? But, just to take you through some numbers I have here, you remember that last year more than 1 million candidates sat for the KCP examinations, and out of that, 8,091 scored more than 400 marks. Another 3,020 got between 301 and 400 marks. We had some 886 candidates who scored between 201 and 300 marks, while 262, 307 candidates had between 101 and 200 marks, and we had only 1,173 pupils who had 100 marks and below. The good news about this is that each and every one of them is going to get an opportunity to go to secondary school. Whether they are going to take advantage of that opportunity or not, that is what we were even discussing with my guests in studio earlier. We'll pick it up after this particular break. Do stay with us. This is News Check.
Tonight on KBC Channel 1.
Mrs. Ayad, what you're saying is...
I mean, from now on, you better cut all contacts with Xiao Ai.
In the same room with you this late?
What's wrong? What are you doing, Xiao Tian?
Helping Yu Guo.
Get back in the car now, young man.
I want to help.
What are you doing?
Helping you push the
You're
car.
not helping me, you're just sick.
Tonight on KBC Channel 1.
Max is your brother.
He's not. He's my stepbrother, and that will not stop me from erasing him from my life, Mother. Don't tell me you're going to stop me now.
Oh, yes,
Come on.
yes, I do.
Anything suspicious?
No, fortunately nothing, but we shouldn't get careless.
No.
That means the girl that Jorge is in love with is Juliana.
I'm sorry, Mother, but your son has to die too.
Juu milimani na hata mabondeni, Radio Taifa inatamba kutamba. Sasa unaweza kupokea matangazo ya Radio Taifa loud and clear popote ulipo Western Kenya.
Radio Taifa, usisahau unaweza ukatupata kupitia
ukiwa Busia, Siaya, Vihiga, Mumias, Yala na maeneo yaliyoko karibu. Radio Taifa inapatikana kwenye 104.5 FM, na ukiwa Bungoma, Kakamega, Kiminini, Kipkaren na viunga vyake, pata vipindi na burudani safi kupitia 92.3 FM. Radio Taifa, sauti ya Mkenya.
Thank you very much for coming here for this event. This event was launching of the broadcasting rights for KBC for the World Rally Championship, the WRC Safari Rally for this year, 2021. Therefore, every Kenyan is going to be able to have an opportunity to watch every step and every action that is going on the rally. It's a great time for us. We're very excited that after 19 years, the rally is actually back here in Kenya. The President has put a lot of effort to ensure that this has happened, as well as the Ministry of Sports under CS Amina Mohammed, to make sure that we're going to see this great event come back to our country.
Welcome back, and thank you so much for staying with us. In case you're just joining us, this is News Check, a program that seeks to explore issues shaping the news in the country. And today, what we are talking about in studio is the Form 1 selection exercise that kicked off today officially. Earlier, Education Cabinet Secretary Professor George Magoha did that at the Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development, talking about quite a number of pertinent issues that center around how this process is going to be done. But one thing that stood out from what he said is that it is going to be a free, fair and transparent process, courtesy of what the Ministry of Education has put in place to ensure that each and every learner, including those from vulnerable backgrounds, those from informal settlements in urban areas and those from far-flung counties, actually get an opportunity to also be absorbed in some of these national and prestigious schools. We are discussing that in studio this particular morning, and earlier, before we took the break, gentlemen, we were talking about the 100% transition program, its progress and success rate, and what needs to be done to make it even better, because you all agree it's a good initiative, it's a step in the right direction. But a lot of issues have been raised, and I wanted to link this up with our now next part of the conversation, which is the COVID-19 pandemic. First of all, let's talk about our girls, before we move into how COVID even affected the education sector as it is. Let's talk about our girls. During this particular pandemic, we saw the shocking revelations, the headlines that we saw. And right now, I believe even among those candidates who are going to Form 1, there are others who are mothers already, who gave birth. We saw some giving birth during the national examinations. How do we address this menace? Because these headlines, these numbers are people. And when you're talking about children, these are not just people, these are futures, these are families. To impact a life of such a young girl at that level has its own ripple effects that may go for years. How do we address this problem? And where is it even originating from?
I think earlier, outside where we were talking about 100% transition rate. 100% transition rate from primary to secondary school is an objective that the ministry is trying, and everybody, all the stakeholders. But some stakeholders, education stakeholders, have in the past expressed some concern that KCP candidates might fail, and they have failed to report to Form 1 because of various issues like the one you have mentioned. Some of them, thousands of them, drop out because of many issues, and most of them this time because of the pandemic. I know many families have their children dropped out of the school because of the pandemic. Others, significantly, number of girls, which you have already mentioned, Madam Achieng, they were pregnant. They became mothers, and some of them were even married. And even some boys, they went out of the school because of drug and the use of drug substances. Others joined informal labor services. Let me come to the girls. And I'll thank, I don't know, is the President or the Minister of Education, that those who are pregnant are given a chance again to go back to school. In the year 2004, I had a privilege of working in Rwanda and for 1 year. And this issue of pregnant school girls being denied a chance or opportunity to go to school, it was not there. It was not there.
In Rwanda?
In Rwanda.
Which year was this again?
That was 2004.
Wow.
What I saw in their education system, they allowed them. Once you go, deliver, come back to school. Even the mothers who were selling sukuma wiki on the road, they were allowed to go to school. And anybody, surprisingly, Achieng, any lady who was doing kuuza hii sukuma wiki on the road, and then she goes to another village, she is not going to be asked to bring a transfer form of what. She just goes to that class and reads. And then the next week, if they migrate to another place, they were allowed. So I think this problem of denying our chance because of the pregnancy is not fair. But let us thank the government that now they're allowed.
They are allowing. I'm coming to you shortly, Jacob. Just allow me to do something here. Remember this program, we also follow up on some of the events that are currently taking place. And right now, I just want us to link up with something that is happening Odi Mtaani initiative that is currently in it is a campaign that the Odi Mtaani initiative is aimed at nurturing and supporting talent from the grassroots. Let's just look at this particular function and understand more about what is in store for the young people in the country.
And we know the first thing that brings a break in most people is luck. So if you can bridge the gap between luck and availability, I think we've already done half of our duty as human beings. Making this a positive and sustainable contribution to society is a very key aspect for us. Keeping it sustainable, we'd say, is a cost, but for us it's a very welcome cost. Grassroots sports has the potential to meet most, if not all, aspirations that people have in this area. My colleague has just mentioned the Olungas of this world, the Omanyalas of this world. Do you guys know Omanyala is from Kitale somewhere, mahali ndani? And if that can grow to where it is right now, is about to represent Kenya and Africa at large, that tells you the aspiration element of this whole thing. And we need to build a platform that can flourish and make the living of everyone possible and easier. This to us is a big commitment. Ladies and gentlemen, we are looking at a scenario where unique talents are not only about competition or entertainment, but also about potential of those talents, having platforms that are competitive and contribute to the economic well-being. Someone said, once your passion starts feeding you, then you've discovered your purpose. Amaje Arocho. It is for this reason that through this partnership, if you forget everything else, I'll say remember this, that through this partnership with Odongo, we have invested over 5 million Kenyan shillings, and particularly 9,000. 9,000 ni ya puspus. So 5 million ni ya Charles, na mama, na gym, na fitness, lakini 9,000 ni ya puspus. Tusisahau hiyo part. Because tunajua paka iko na 9 lives. So tunassume tu ngiri moja ya kila life. Ama je Alex ndio? Ama je Alex? Si hapo tuko sawa? So we are looking at 5,000 and 9 million. Na pia kuna kitu kingine tunamuongezea hapo, which is a full gym and a car. Also the car, by the way, if I'm not wrong, where is Frank? Frank, you can confirm, the car has a car seat ya puspus. Wapi Frank? Ata confirm baadaye, eh? The car also has a car seat ya puspus. So I think we are catered for puspus. Puspus seems to be a big part of Charles's life, eh? Na alipata watoto? Apparently puspus has 2 children. So guys, tuendelee tu kunini? Tuendelee kusupport. Eh? They are called Zalendo and Chichi. They are old men. They are old men. So Zalendo and Chichi, puspus has 2. Arocho tufanye homecoming ya hizo pusi ama? Wednesday homecoming ya puspus. Tuko sawa, confirmed. Agree, take note, eh? To this end, we are able to not just help him sustain his business, not just help him sustain his life, but also by effect of him affecting his community. Charles made a very specific request. Let me grow from where I am. How often do you hear people saying that? Watu wengi wanajua kiomoka wanaenda mtaa ingine. Yeye alisema anataka kugrow kutoka Runga ndo aweze kugrow na jeshi yake. Na jeshi yako iko hapa? Jeshi ya Charles mkono? Awesome. So he said he wants to grow with his team, and he intimated that he needs this to remain at home. If any man is committed to grow his home, that man deserves respect. Ama namna gani si ndio? So ladies and gentlemen, it is now my pleasure to welcome Mr. Charles Odogo to give his remarks. Charles, karibu sana. Power iko.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Bwana Dedan. And we appreciate our main man today. Definitely. Hapo sasa, Odi Mtaani.
All right, so that is currently underway at Stanley Hotel right here in Nairobi. Odi Bet has started a campaign, an awareness campaign. It's called Odi Mtaani Initiative, an initiative that is aimed at nurturing and supporting talent from the grassroots level. There you have it. If you're a young person, talented, and I believe most of us are, this is an opportunity that actually can go a long way for you to thrive in this particular journey. We will be following up that particular, function for you, and we'll be giving you more details about it later on. But in studio, we are talking about the Form 1 selection exercise that kicked off today. And of course, we are also just bringing this conversation into a bigger perspective to look at the education sector and some of the issues that are coming from this particular sector, challenges that we are facing as a country, what needs to be done to ensure that even as we put in place policies and measures and programs to ensure that as many learners as possible have access and a chance to quench their thirst for education, we consider their unique challenges, their unique circumstances, and what they are going through. And that is what we have been doing with my guests in studio. Just to remind you, it's a panel of two gentlemen. From the far right there, I'm having Jacob Kioko, he's an educationist. And also I'm having at the center there, Major Retired Peter Muithi, a governance and policy expert, also an educationist. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for staying with me. I want us to now continue with what we were talking about earlier. Before we went to that particular live link, we were discussing the teenage pregnancy menace and how it has affected our girls. And Peter, you also brought on board the boys in this conversation. Most of the time, they are left at the back seat when we are talking about teenage pregnancy. I just want us to understand more about how we deal with this menace, because we cannot be talking about access to education for all learners, and yet our girls are facing this. Is it a health or a social crisis, or both, depending on how you look at it? We need to address this issue. And you had, spoken a bit. I just want us to go to Jacob, and then we'll come back to your point.
Yeah. Now, the 100% transition program is not very clear up to this hour. What is 100% transition? Does it extend up to university level, or where does it stop? After class 6, there's junior secondary before you go to senior secondary.
Mm-hmm.
Up to this hour, it's not clear. Is junior secondary in primary, or is it in secondary? That point is not clear as yet.
Just to clarify on that as you continue, this particular morning as the CS was launching this particular exercise, he touched on that a little bit and tasked stakeholders, education stakeholders, to begin identifying which of these primary schools ought to be transformed into the junior primary school. So I believe it's a process that has commenced, but I understand your point on that.
Yeah. True. Now, before he said that, before the CS said that, it was dark.
Okay.
Now, it's now clear. We have light at the end of the tunnel. Now, the 100% transition, does it extend up to university level? Or at some level, one can drop? This is another area where we need clarification. Now, touching on the women, or the girls' pregnancy, I'm sure these pregnancies are not virgin pregnancies. I'm sure a male must have played some part. And the male, that is usually the pupils on their peers, is a matter that must be addressed with the seriousness it deserves. Because if we talk about the girl and the girl and the girl and the girl, mm-hmm, without addressing the boy, then we are not tackling the problem in its totality. There is need for complete attitudinal change, that it is not the girl who has the problem. You two who brought about the problem should be blamed, such that the girl does not feel it was my mistake because of my biological build. And then, one feels completely out of society. Mm-hmm. So the story here should be, the girl should be encouraged not to feel stigmatized, and the boy should be encouraged not to make his sister to feel the way she does. Because ultimately, when they are all grown, they are now mature. What happens? Both parties would want to get married. And we have so many girls who have not married, but they have children. And the same problem. Here the boy wants to get married. Is the boy now, that is the training that we should have. Is the boy, are you ready to get married to a person who has a child? So the way you would want not to do that, feel it for your sister. So please do not feel like you have done it and you get away with it. You are not going to get away with it because later in society, later in life, in your society, there's going to be that problem. So you are a contributor to a serious social problem and you must not be allowed to continue doing it. This is the attitudinal change which we must have, because if we continue talking about the girl, she's stigmatized, okay, she is stigmatized, but it is her biological makeup. It is not by will, it is by her biological makeup, because if the reverse happened to the boy, what will happen?
It would be the same situation. but as I come to you, so you say the girl should not feel stigmatized, she should not be victimized for this, and the boy should not be allowed to get away with it. But why are we victimizing the boy already? Is it always the boy's fault? What about the so-called Romeo and Juliet affair?
Well, the thing is,
the voluntary agreement, because it's there. I mean, the boyfriend-girlfriend relationship. Why is it that the boy is always the one to carry the blame in this arrangement? I agree with you. We have to talk to our children, but how do we deal with the Romeo and Juliet affair?
The issue is attitudinal change, and part of this is as a result of again the economic problem. The girl is vulnerable in that she has issues that she must buy which are not available at home, and there is that natural weakness. And there it is, she is enticed into the wrong thing because of poverty.
To survive.
Yeah.
I agree with that. So it's not even just the boy, sometimes it's even a man, an adult who a male. So it's not just a boy.
I think, Madam Achieng, if you read the face of our CS today, he was very categorically insisting that punishment should be meted on those people who prey on school girls. And he called them hyena.
He has been very passionate about this subject.
He called them hyena, and this is a new phenomenon. Previously, before we embarked on the 100% transition, a girl would get pregnant and it drops off completely because of the stigma. Nobody follows that girl to go back to school. But these days, they are allowed now to go back to school. But as we were discussing earlier, Achieng, you remember, we agreed that there is a stigma. That you are also telling me that even the infrastructure of those pregnant girls in schools is a taboo. Because the desk, the protruding of their changes, the body changes is a problem. The maternity dress, I think the Minister of Education should go a bit further and elaborate. Although we have agreed the young girls who are pregnant to go back to school, how do we mitigate the challenges that they face, the daily challenges from the stigma of their peers, the teachers themselves who need education actually, the society at large, you understand? But it will come slowly, and things will work. But the Minister of Education should come up very clearly, bringing the education. I don't know about the new curriculum, how it is being pegged with the sex education in our schools, because sex education is very important, and this should include all the members of the society, what we are kanisa, the churches, the mosques, to educate them that, okay, as much as it's a problem, but it should be mitigated in one way spiritually. The law, I don't know what the law, because in my village, I saw some of them when they were pregnant, the parent must report to the teacher and then report to the local police station. And sometimes I didn't like it. The child is taken to the police station to go and explain what happened. And they even sought the boy. Even the boys these days, they're taken to the police station. And that also brings a stigma again. You
And that
understand?
fear,
So I
the
think
fear of unknown.
Yeah, fear of unknown. I think and if the parents do not report, which is also a good idea, about keeping their teenage girls who are pregnant at home, they're also, I don't know what the law says about it, but these days they are supposed to report. If they don't, they are liable again to the court. I think the Minister of Education should go a bit further to try and bring out things very clearly. What do we do with it, rather than bringing them out there in the airspace?
I like those points you're raising, and just in the interest of my viewer, because you mentioned some very fundamental issues, maybe this can help inform policy, inform decision making going forward. And I was sharing with you, gentlemen, earlier that I got an opportunity to actually just follow up this trail of teenage pregnancy in the country. This is during this COVID-19 season, and traveled to Bungoma, Siaya in Kisumu County, and discussed with a few girls. Some of them were not even planning to go back to school, and talking to them issues that they were raising, like you were saying, Peter. They were telling me, yes, the government has given us that go ahead to go back to school and resume our studies, but if you go back to school, there's still that stigma. We are still looked at as that dark spot, that wrong company. Parents don't want us to associate with their children anymore. They feel we will, for lack of a better term, spoil them. When we go to school, teachers see us as people who've not come to study, but we've come with other motives. So they keep on telling us, reminding us of our pregnancy throughout our education journey. So they opt to stay home. Others decried of that outfit, the uniform they use for school. It's not maternity friendly, and they're not comfortable in it. They would even like an opportunity where they can be allowed to go in civilian clothes for that duration. Others say the desk, as your belly is becoming bigger by the day, it is not accommodating you, and you start feeling like you're in the wrong place. Even your peers would start mocking you and telling you you do not belong here. Go home, you're a parent. So such issues need to be addressed. Even if we're creating spaces for our learners, how are we looking at their unique challenges, what they are going through, their unique circumstances, so that even if we're giving them these opportunities, then they're still able to thrive under those unique circumstances. And I believe these are points we can talk on, go on and on about. And even I talked to a teenage father who, my curiosity was, why is it that the boy is always running away? The boy is always not in the picture. And he was telling me that one would want to be part of the baby's journey, but the stigma, the shame, the victimization, you want to be arrested. Most of the time they say you defiled the girl, and sometimes it's not even the issue. Maybe she was your girlfriend. It was voluntary. So this is why many boys shy away from being in the picture during that particular time. So maybe even parents and society, we should rethink how we are addressing this issue, how we are dealing with these cases of teenage pregnancy going forward. But let's leave that aside and, gentlemen, move now to another subject. And I wanted us to talk about COVID-19 and the education sector generally. We know that even as we speak right now, the academic calendar has really been shaken up and turned upside down, and it may take us years to come back to normal, the way the academic calendar used to go initially. But generally speaking, what do you think is the biggest hit that the education sector has taken from this COVID-19 pandemic, Jacob?
Well, I think the biggest hit has been the disruption in what we are used to as, say, this is the beginning of the year in January. Everybody, parent, pupil and teacher, and also the Minister of Education is focused on reopening of schools in January. It's the beginning of the term, of the year. Now we are in June and we are in term 2. Of the school calendar. Now, the problem here is we have not quite adjusted into focusing on that, and the parent, most of the parents do not have the financial muscle to pay for their obligations. The other day, the Minister for Education was saying parents must pay. Okay, I agree, they must pay. But the money is not there.
But he said some capable parents are already taking advantage of this opportunity, of this window that the government provided.
Precisely. Yeah. We are all human beings, and we are all feeling the heat from COVID-19. As a result of which, if there is an opportunity which is not illegal, why not make use of it if you can? But the issue here is, again, my point goes back to the economy. If we were all enabled to pay our fees, our obligations, then the issue that the minister cited will not be there, because responsible people with the capability will pay. But those who are not able have a real problem. Their problems could be genuine, that the money is not there, and I know I have an obligation of paying fees for my child, but reality is the money is just not there. And that is the bottom line. The money is just not there. Those who are taking advantage, of course, are not scrupulous people. Those are unscrupulous people. But besides the unscrupulous people, the genuine Kenyan who actually wants to meet all his obligations to the school and the state, but he is not able. That is where the real challenge is. The COVID-19 thing has made a lot of people lose their jobs, and businesses have gone down and others under, and the schools themselves, the institutions, also have had their own unfair share of the COVID-19 problem. And the way out is not to continue discussing it. The way out is to come up with a program or programs. What is the way forward? And that is what is most key. So,
before you go to the way forward, because that is something I want us to explore next, I just want us to see how bad the situation is. COVID-19 has really affected several sectors, and today we are talking about the education sector. So in the interest of fairness, just allow me, Peter, also just chip into this particular question. If you look at the education sector overall and just address how this pandemic has affected the sector and what it has brought forth about it. What are we learning about our sector, courtesy of the COVID-19 pandemic?
Here we are talking about the effects of the COVID-19. It has had a lot of impact on many sectors. When we narrow ourselves to the education, as my colleague has said, most of the parents lost jobs. So the question is, where could they get the finance to take their children to school and pay for whatever is needed by those schools? Let us also not remember that the ed teachers in those schools, specifically the boarding schools, they also want, how can they run the school? There's no food for the children, so that is also an impact. And I think our CS brought that issue of if your child, if you are a parent, you are not meeting your obligation, the child should go home. I think he wanted to cushion the ed teachers who have a huge problem in keeping those children there, and yet they are supposed to have food and all other necessary needs.
So we push the government to the wall with our lack of sincerity.
The problem is again, I would like again to go to the corruption. Remember, when we had this problem of COVID, there was some money which was given out to mitigate these things. Now, the question is, how much money did it go to our education institutions so that they can cushion them? That is the question. Secondly, the private schools. And I really wondered, because some, as we are talking, Madam Achieng, right now, there are some private schools which have closed. And yet these schools were subsidizing the education which is supposed to be provided by the government. They were left behind here. Nobody bothered about them. They are still closed. The teachers, you remember there was a problem of the private teachers, which is a huge number in this country. They lost jobs. How did the government help them? They were own teachers. They are Kenyan citizens. They're supposed to be helped. I do not know what other governments did to the private teachers in other countries. But to me, I think they were supposed to have been given some little money from the government so that they can also do what? Remember, there were teachers as much as they were parents. They are the children also to those. So that is also an impact which should have been looked at. It was really forgotten. But to me, I think the big question is here, our priorities. Now, the COVID COVID subsistence, which was inside the budget, was 14-point-something billion shillings. You remember the Kenyans really cried and said, this is a huge amount of money that we were given to mitigate the COVID. Where did it go? I'm sure if the proper plan was done to give Minister of Education some little amount of money, I think we should not have a big problem. But all in all, the COVID-19 had a lot of impact in the education sector, like other sectors, but the money, the way it was channeled, it was not proper. We would not have felt the impact as we are feeling now. It was misappropriation of those funds.
Apart from the economic impact, also one of the things that I see as a big impact is the closure of schools for almost 8 months. That really, as a teacher, correct me if I'm wrong, affects the learning curve of these youngsters. Also, the teenage pregnancy menace we are talking about here, it came with a lot of social consequences, this COVID-19 pandemic. But just to address something you raised, Jacob, you're representing private schools here. I don't know, just to address what he brought on board, did the government address this issue? Did you feel cushioned? What was something done? Was there an allocation, or are plans there to do that for private schools?
It was very, very, very unfortunate because not a single dime was given to any private school. You exist the way you began, and up to this hour, it's your shrewdness in business which will make you continue being in business. Although we are actually educating Kenyans, we have been relegated into the oblivion. And, you know, at one time, the position was that it is the parent who chose to take his or her child to a private school, foot the bill, and that's it. That position has not changed up to this hour. So the impact on private schools at all levels was heavily negative, and it continues to be as negative as it was before COVID-19, because actually even there before there was some discrepancy in the selection of Form 1 regarding a Kenyan from a private institution and a Kenyan from a public institution. I think that is what the minister is trying to correct now, because it was there before. And the impact, the general impact on COVID-19 has been very heavy on private schools, as it has been on other sectors of the economy. So, by the grace of God, some private schools are still running, and we hope the COVID-19 pandemic prong is going to calm down so that we can revert to where we were before it came on board. But like all other sectors of the economy, we were badly hit.
Yeah, true. All right. So we want to recover. We want to borrow lessons, gentlemen. We want to move on, because this is the reality. COVID has come with its own fair share of challenges in the education sector. What do you propose is the way forward? You are just about to do that, Jacob.
Yes.
What is this formula that is going to work?
Yes.
Because we need to move on, and our learners need to also continue with their learning journey. So what do we do so that we absorb the shock?
Absolutely that. This is my specialty area. As I've said, I am an innovator and have developed an innovation which enables a country to raise investment capital from its own local resources instead of waiting for foreigners to come and invest, to create jobs, to set up factories so that people get jobs, and to stabilize generally in the economy. It also helps the state to raise in more revenue than is possible at the moment. So, in a nutshell, I don't want to talk too much on that. It's too long for me to explain every detail. So the issue here is, it is common knowledge to us all that COVID-19 is a two-pronged pandemic. One is medical and the other one is economic. Now, the developed economies of the world have developed vaccines which seek to trim the medical prong of COVID-19. Now, Kenya, through this innovation, and it's a patented innovation, has developed a Dugu innovation which seeks to trim the economic prong of COVID-19. Now, with the support of the governments of those countries who developed the vaccines, the WHO, that is the World Health Organization, has accredited the vaccines so developed as the solution to the medical prong of the pandemic. Now here, and that's why I'm calling upon the government of Kenya to observe its constitutional obligations as stipulated in Article 40, Section 5 of the Constitution to support, promote, and protect the intellectual property rights of the people of Kenya and support this innovation, lobby the WTO, that is the World Trade Organization, to accredit this innovation as the solution to the economic prong of COVID-19. That will be of immense benefit to this nation, and the economy of the country will, because the entire world will now converge on us for training, advice, and consultations. The revenue the government is going to raise from that will be enough not only to finance our national budget, but also to pay off our bloated foreign debt.
All right. All right.
So the key issue here is, please may the government of the Republic of Kenya lobby the World Trade Organization to accredit this innovation, and the innovation details are already with the World Trade Organization, which is the custodian of all world patents. And the innovation was patented on the 26th of March 2010, so it's about 20 years old.
All right.
And all that we need, and that's why I'm emphasizing this, pardon me for overemphasizing this,
Yeah.
it's very important that if the government of the Republic of Kenya, today is Tuesday the 15th, lobbied the WTO, and this innovation were accredited by the WTO, then tomorrow, the 16th, the economic situation of the country will change dramatically as the economies of the countries who developed the vaccines has, without a shadow of doubt, changed.
All right. Well said, Jacob. An option on the table, so we hope that will go somewhere. Yes.
My take on this, Madam Achieng,
Yes.
when this pandemic came in, I thought the government did a small mistake here. We did not initiate our local traditional medicine men. You remember Tanzania, the former head of state, Magufuli, initiated and talked to the people to take ndimu. Not ndimu. As my colleague has said, it's a medical issue. Yeah, lemons. And all of a sudden in Kenya, lemons went up. I also have a shamba of lemons. I sold them also. Now, we did not give a chance to our local traditionalists, to our local nutritionists. We did not give them a chance. We over-dependent, even by information from outside. I saw our health secretary, Kagu. All the time he was referring to what they are doing there. This is a phenomenon, and I'm very sure if we had initiated our local healers here, we have herbs. In fact, these vaccines, you'll be surprised that the content comes from the herbs from China, whatever they are doing research. We neglected the research of our local people here in this country.
But with the interest,
that is also a mistake.
Yeah,
we should have initiated them to do research, tell us what is happening here, and we should have moved along with our partners of the World Health Organization, as my colleague is saying.
All right. I almost disagreed with you there on looking at our local, herbalists.
Yeah.
at that particular time, this pandemic caught everyone unaware, and we were still learning.
But they were not given a
everyone
chance
was
at
still
all.
learning on the go.
We thought about Wazungus there.
When you said research, then I sort of like agreed with you, because it's a journey, and it's something that really needs you know, a lot of research to understand the virus, how it mutates, what needs to be done. And even the scientists and the experts agreed that even them, they are overwhelmed. They are still trying to learn this particular pandemic.
But agree with me, the problem we have in this country, we are still having colonial mentality that nothing good can come out of us. We must depend on the West for anything, for our solution. And I'm sure our youth, if we manage to bring our youth on board, they are very, very innovative in all sectors, in health, in education, in what they are doing on the field of running, athletics, music. You can see they are very potential, but our government is just ignoring them, either by intent or by mistake. I just don't understand. But if we are given our medicine, as I know you will not like to buy that sort of line that but I think if we were given them a chance to come and do their own traditional research, bring us the food, bring us the medicine, go to the forest, they should bring us what they think can mitigate this, we would have gone ahead. And maybe we would not have lost many people who went with the COVID-19.
COVID is still here with us, Peter. So it's
then
still
the government should now think of them.
It's still a work in progress. The journey still continues.
Because, madam, we are here.
The door is
my
not closed yet.
We are shaping the opinion of our citizens.
Yeah, true.
Then by that, let them bring on board. I don't know what the association of these traditional healers. Whether they brought this on board, I don't know.
All right. I'd like us to just leave that at that, because it's a topic that can bring mixed reactions and a lot of controversy, if you agree with me. Still, a lot of research needs to be done. Certification, I believe before a medicine is approved, there has to be a process for it to be taken through. So
you're not being controversial.
Let's leave that subject. Kindly, gentlemen, allow me. We're not going to be talking about that. All right. So I want us to look at what else do we do for our learners, because when COVID came, we saw what happened in the working environment. We saw what happened in the business environment. Sort of everything was closed down suddenly. And other careers, I believe, just went under the carpet just like that, courtesy of what COVID did. Should we rethink our learning, our education system, our career path, how even we formulate some of these things, so that in the event we are faced with such, we do not have to shut down completely. We still remain relevant. Is there something that can be done to that effect?
Yes, I believe there is. There is a lot that can be done, and everything will narrow down to research. We cannot wake up one morning and say, let us have all that which we have known to be the way forward. We need to do a lot of research, and that research, modern day research, it must be modern day research. We cannot revert to our ancestors and, go by what they knew to be the best. Things change, and things have changed. And that is why, Mom and my colleague, I'm here very emphatic. That research cannot take place in a vacuum. That research needs a lot of financing. And that research, both social, economic, as well as political, all those areas, 3 areas, need a lot of research. And without the money to carry out that research, we are not making a headway. There is a lot that we have learned, we have seen, and we have not learned enough. So we need to delve into the depths of what is required to be done, and that can only translate into, let us start serious research in these areas where we think we need to improve, or where we need to understand more of what is happening around us. And the only solution is to have the funds, the government to have the funds, because no matter how much we push the government, when the economy cannot afford it, it's a futility. And no matter who is in office, as long as the money is not there, and it is not my making that the money is not there, it is a futility. The only thing, according to me, is to come up with projects And this is one such project which will generate funds to enable the government to fund those areas where there is need for funding and adequately. Because funding is one thing, adequate funding is quite another. So the issue here is, no matter how long we spend time on it, without coming up with something tangible to say tomorrow you are out of a job today, but tomorrow here is the project which is going to give you a job. All other stories will come after you have had food on the table. And that is what is critical.
That is the most important thing. How do we ensure that Kenyans can be able to sustain themselves?
Yes.
Let's begin there.
Yes.
I like that. Peter, what do we do?
What do we do? We know what we do.
We closed schools, we closed businesses, we closed everything. How do we ensure we don't close down again?
This is a very serious issue, and I thank you very much for bringing it so that we can have a conversation and try to shape the opinion of our viewers out there. I think the government should invest a lot on technology. You remember during the campaign of our president, the first time, he said he would have, how many, was it computers to our children? Do we have computers to our children? Do we have some schools somewhere in Turkana that they have light, electricity? Those are the questions we should have. That's why I'm saying we should improve very much on the technology. Secondly, we should improve on our infrastructure. Now, the Ministry of the Treasury is not disbursing the funds for CDF. How else will those classes? And if you go to our public schools, it's not a shame to say it. If you go to our public schools, unlike private schools, you'll find a class which is supposed to have 40. It is over 60, over 30. And you stated when we began this conversation that in some schools, you went and found they are studying on the outside.
And the trees.
You see?
We saw them even in the
government must put its foot out there by improving our infrastructure. Another area is teachers. How do we motivate our teachers? Especially when we have this new curriculum. You found out last year before even the COVID, there were so many strikes. Our education system was disrupted by the strikes of teachers wanting to be given salaries, what have you. The government should look at motivating our teachers. Another thing is, and I appreciate the government also, I think it is funded the medical bills for our students, I think. I think there is
there's something to that effect.
That's a very good. And the stakeholders who are in trying to work together in unity with the government, they should also be considered to be given some subsidies, especially the private schools. The private schools, as much as they are doing business, they are educating this person who is coming to do something for our country. So the stakeholders who are there, the government should think about them. In fact, it can be thought of having something from our budget. Understand? All in all, we should unite together and remember, there is no nation which can prosper development-wise when its citizens are not educated. And when I'm talking about education, it's proper education, quality education, which can enable them to solve their own problems, not education for the collar jobs. You understand? Education that is geared, its curriculum is geared to solving the social problems that its citizens have.
All right. I believe that's the bigger picture for the competency-based curriculum. That's what we are trying to address as a country. About the infrastructure, some good news from the CS this morning is he said that the Ministry of Education received an allocation of 1.9 billion shillings. This is going to be, spent on chairs and desks for primary and secondary schools. And when he was saying that, he actually, that is when he brought out the point of, stakeholders to identify which primary schools will be transformed into junior primary schools, so that this can be factored in this chair and desk program as they allocate this particular funds. But this is something that is on the pipeline. I just want us also to talk about you know, how do we ensure that even as we come back, even as our learners go back to school, you remember there was that concern that was raised even today about those from vulnerable, you know, backgrounds. There's always that issue of unfair competition, that you find that a learner has been studying under very tight and unfriendly learning environments, and they're expected to compete at par with somebody who has really had it you know, good with them in their education journey. And here they have to really compete for these same schools, same, you know, facilities. How do we ensure that we level this so that we do not leave any learner behind?
Like Madam Achieng,
somebody has been studying under trees in some county, and they are sitting for the same national examination. During the COVID-19 season, somebody was you know, studying online. They had online classes. Another person, they don't even have electricity in their village. And then you expect these two people to compete.
I think now, when we look at the 2010 Constitution, which is a devolved unit, which gives us the devolved unit to the counties, the county governors, the county bosses there should work very hard in trying to bring the funds to the education. This is 2021. There's no reason why we can give to anybody that a Kenyan student is learning under a tree. I don't know what reason. So our bosses out there in the counties should work very, very hard and ensure that they place the infrastructure that is needed. There is also another vulnerable group, Madam Achieng, that we should also factor in this discussion: the disabled or the special needs. I'm aware that there are 32 special needs of secondary school capacity, which have about 1,453 students. And these are classified as national schools. These are not enough. We have many students in this country who are disabled, and they are there. Sometimes you will find they are handicapped in hearing, but they are taken to special schools. I don't know. The government should work very, very hard to integrate these students, plus the infrastructure. I know one school in Vika, which is being headed by the Salvation Army. It's doing a good job. The government supplement this and let us not leave them behind. Let us put them on board by recognizing them and putting the infrastructure that is needed for them.
A word on that, Jacob, perhaps?
Yes. All said and done, and my colleague and you too agree with me, more funds are needed to assist those who are less fortunate, learning under trees, the disabled, and all that. And the bottom line comes to, does the government have the money to finance the very good projects you are here highlighting? The bottom line here is, let us think outside the box as a government, as a nation, and develop ways of raising revenue to meet our obligations, as we are here suggesting, that here are special children, special Kenyans. They have special needs. We need a good school with the right infrastructure. Does the government have the money to put that infrastructure for that special need? That is the key question. Now, no matter how much we push the government to do what we think is right, without the government having the funds to do that, it's like a parent being pushed by a child, I want a suit and I want a suit, when the parent doesn't have the money to buy that suit. No matter how hard the child pushes, and no matter how much that parent loves that child, if the funds are not there, they are just not there. So my discussion here and elsewhere is, may we lobby the government to value, to factor in ideas, like we are now, giving out ideas of its citizens, not to brush them off, but to value what every citizen says, because that could be the magic word. That on adopting this, you are there. You get the solution to the problem, because here what hurts us most is the inability economically to finance that which we would want financed. That is what is most critical.
And Achieng, to add on,
as we wind up,
as we wind up, I think this is a very good conversation. And as we have enlightened, we discussed about the pandemic, the effects of pandemic of HIV. I think the government, because the parents are being, are really feeling it. If the government want to caution the parents who have children going to school and they cannot afford, I think the best way, the money which has been allocated to mitigate the COVID, should be paid to those companies which are giving food. What those parents need right now, because they don't have a job, is unga to go down, cooking oil to go down, bread, fuel to go down, so that whatever kibarua they do, they can have money to take their children to school.
Thank you so much, gentlemen, for creating time. I know it's a conversation we can have and keep going on and on about, but that's where we stop at today. We'll be picking it up as it continues to develop. Today, the Form 1 selection exercise kicked off officially, launched by the Education Cabinet Secretary, Professor George Magoha, earlier this particular morning. We've come to the end of our conversation. Thank you so much for choosing KBC Channel 1 and for watching News Check. My name is Serfine Achieng Ouma. Coming up is Tamrini, the Swahili version of the program. Do stand by for that.